We gave ourselves just 36 hours to experience a winter wonderland in Colorado, and it was beautiful and magical and terrifying. Come join us on this snowy adventure on the Savory Suitcase. We are Hannah and Jeremy, and in 2025, we set off to take short trips all over the U.S. on our goal to visit all 50 states. So naturally, Colorado in December was the perfect way to wrap up the year. After landing in Denver early on a Saturday morning, we headed straight for a little Christmas cheer at Hammond's Candy Factory. They offer a quick 30-minute tour that is free, probably with the hopes that you'll pick up some goodies in their gift shop.
Hammond's has been making handmade candy since 1920, and thanks to a few features in some national magazines and a spot on Oprah's Favorite Things, they have recently grown to be a nationally recognized brand.
All of our chefs in the kitchen know that candy is ready. One candy to about 220 degrees, and they use water going through the pipes on the side, which is how it's cooled. Now, it does depend on which candy we make. They'll put the core on top of it. Once that thing's done, they'll end up rolling it, and it'll almost look like a candy burrito once it's done.
They are most well known for their hand-pulled hard candy like candy canes and lollipops, making Christmas time a particularly busy time of year. They still use much of the same equipment and techniques that they have been using since they first started.
Thank you.
They have dozens of different flavors of candy canes, and they have also now expanded into the chocolate market. I guess their plan worked because we absolutely left with a bag full of goodies.
Our next stop in Denver was the Edgewater Public Market for lunch, and a stop at a very well-known local bakery, Black Box. The market has tons of different food stalls and small local shops. We picked up some empanadas and soup dumplings, and both were delicious.
Then we grabbed our order from the Black Box Bakery. We did order ahead online, which opens around 9 a.m., and I would definitely recommend doing that, as by the time we showed up, many of the top choices were already sold out for the day. We also grabbed coffee, of course. And then we hit the highway and headed an hour west on I-70. Well, it should have taken about an hour, but in reality we ended up in about 2.5 hours of traffic, and we knew that there was snow in the forecast for where we were headed, but we really didn't know what to expect.
This was pretty anxiety-inducing for us, or well, at least for me. I think we did all of the right things. We drove slow, but stayed with the flow of traffic. We had a 4-wheel drive car with all-season tires. We had a full tank of gas just in case, but as native Floridians, this was a very new and uncomfortable experience.
So there ended up being a jackknifed semi blocking the road, which is what caused the delay. But I'll give it to Colorado, they are efficient. They had the accident pretty quickly cleared, even in the snow, and the plows came through by the time the road was reopened.
Once we finally made it to our exit, we had missed our afternoon train ride, so we ended up heading to our hotel to check in. We stayed at the Georgetown Mountain Inn, which was $160 for one night. The room was basic, but had everything that we needed for the night, and it was warm and cozy, which is exactly what we needed after a chilly few hours on the highway.
Despite being here for such a short time, we decided to ride out the rest of the afternoon storm in the room, then grabbed dinner at the restaurant downstairs at the hotel, and then headed back up the hill to our evening train ride in the Georgetown Loop Railroad.
In total, there was about 8 inches of snow throughout the day, and by night, the temperatures had dropped into the low 20s. This is my Floridian approved winter outfit. I must have boots
And pants and boots and pants and boots and pants.
and a full-length jacket, gloves. I put plastic gloves,
Hot tip.
onion
Why?
gloves, helps with the wind, and a hat. And I am still cold.
Oh boy.
That was like a perfect snowball. Wait, didn't you say you missed the train ride? You're probably thinking to yourself. Why, yes, I did say that. But originally, we had planned to ride the train both during the day and at night. Wouldn't that be boring to do the same thing twice? You're now probably thinking to yourself. Why, no, absolutely not. It has snow on it.
In the evenings, they have Santa's lighted forest rides, where the area around the tracks have been decked out with Christmas lights and scenes of elves and North Pole and polar bears and even Bigfoot. They have a couple of different types of tickets, from the presidential class all the way down to coach. The coach seats were $39 per person for adults, and since we were riding twice, we stuck with the lower cost option.
Santa is on board for every ride from Thanksgiving to Christmas Eve, and he comes around to every car to visit everyone.
I know him. Yes, thank you. Okay. That's what I want for Christmas. Is more love.
The Georgetown Loop Railroad has been operating since the late 19th century, and it remains one of Colorado's most remarkable engineering feats. Originally completed in 1884, this narrow gauge line was carved into the steep walls of the Clear Creek Canyon to connect the booming mining towns of Georgetown and Silver Plume, gaining over 600 feet in elevation across just 2 miles of terrain.
To achieve this, engineers designed a dramatic corkscrew route with horseshoe curves, tight grades approaching 4%, and the iconic Devil's Gate High Bridge, which allowed the track to loop back over itself, a marvel in railroad construction at the time. You cross that bridge at the start and at the end of your ride, and both times are jaw-dropping both during the day and at night. It's one of the best photo moments on the entire route, so have your phone ready to capture it.
The next morning, we woke up to an absolutely magical winter wonderland. It had stopped snowing, but there was still a layer of snow covering the mountains and trees. The streets had been plowed, and the sun was coming out to warm us up just the tiniest bit. So we made our way to the historic 6th Street downtown area in search of a hearty breakfast. We found ourselves at the Happy Cooker, and you know we had to get the cinnamon rolls. It was as big as my face.
We then spent the next few hours wandering around the Georgetown Christmas Market, which happens the first 2 weekends in December. The market brings in all kinds of artisans with handcrafted gifts and Christmas ornaments and local pastries. We even stumbled on a group of local carolers.
And then, as if the Christmas Hallmark town couldn't have gotten any more Hallmark Christmassy, we found ourselves on a horse-drawn carriage around town, learning about the town's mining history from a third-generation local.
The Hotel de Paris. In 1873, a young army deserter who's now calling himself Louis Dupuis is injured in a mining energy museum. That is a fully functioning hydroelectric power plant, which sounds pretty impressive until you realize that in 1901, there were like 5 light bulbs in all. He was the kind of guy that would buy the land above your claim, block your access to your claim, wait till you went bankrupt, and then buy the claim at a discount. He was that guy. But you should see his house. Straight ahead over here, this brick building we're coming up on. That's actually the schoolhouse. It was dedicated in 1870. The town prospered till about 1898. In 1898, the U.S. government. So it became a very popular hot place.
Hi.
We did a little bit more shopping and then explored a local shop called Neisel and Anderson, a specialty grocer that has been serving the town for over 140 years. We picked up a picnic lunch of cheese and pastries.
We then headed up the hill again to catch the daytime ride for the Loop Railroad. The staff was super accommodating to help us get rebooked after our missed tickets from the day before. So we were still able to enjoy the train during the day, getting the chance to see the snow-covered mountains and valleys. In its heyday, the Loop wasn't just a freight line. It became one of Colorado's earliest tourist attractions, with multiple daily trains bringing visitors from Denver to take in the stunning mountain scenery at the height of the silver boom.
After commercial operations ended in 1938, the original line was dismantled, but thanks to dedicated preservation efforts beginning in the 1970s, the railroad was painstakingly reconstructed and reopened in 1984 as a heritage railway. Today, the steam locomotives navigate the same winding route and carry you through the same mountains. It's one of those travel moments where the scenery is gorgeous, the history is real, and the whole experience just sticks with you.
Now that the highway was cleared, it was easy enough for us to head back towards Denver to catch our flight home, but not before stopping in Golden, Colorado for a quick tour of the Coors factory. These tours are pretty hard to get and book up weeks in advance, so we happened to snag a last-minute spot that morning, and it seemed like a sign that it was meant to be.
You take a quick bus ride onto the factory grounds where you meet up with your tour guide and step into a piece of American brewing history. The Golden, Colorado Brewery was founded in 1873 and is still the largest single-site brewery in the world, producing more beer under one roof than any other facility on the planet.
Enjoy the tour, and please stay tuned for some important information. Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks, guys, and hello, everyone. Welcome to the largest single-site brewery in the world.
Before starting the tour, we need
Our guide led us through the whole brewing process, where they really do start with fresh Rocky Mountain water, hops, barley, and yeast, and carry it all the way through fermentation to end up with the finished beer.
By heat, that converts the starches to sugar.
As part of the tour, you also get 3 full pours of beer. But if you aren't a huge beer drinker like me, you can ask them for about a half a glass, since they are very strict about not letting anyone else share your beer.
Pure microscopic. When they're done, they hand it over to the taste testers, who make sure the flavor profile is right. To my right, you see the bottom of those steeping tanks? Keep in mind, those are 25 feet tall. Full of water. We spread it out nice and pretty, let it grow because we keep this room nice and neat.
At the end of the tour, we got to see the bottling line, which was really one of my favorite parts. It's just so many big machines. And then it was time for us to hustle on to the airport. And that was our 36 hours in Colorado. Thanks for watching. We've got more adventures coming in 2026, so make sure you stick around.